At some point in a new relationship, romantic or otherwise, a neurodivergent adult faces a specific decision that neurotypical people just don't have to navigate the same way. Do I tell this person? When? How much? What if they don't understand? What if they use it against me later? What if I tell them and they leave? And what if I don't tell them and they eventually figure it out anyway? That decision has layers most relationship advice doesn't address. Today, we're going there. Welcome to Wisdom from the Porch. I'm GP. This is Wisdom from the Porch. Before we get to the disclosure question, it helps to understand the neurodivergent dating patterns that tend to appear before any disclosure happens. Because these are often what makes the disclosure feel urgent. The intensity escalation. ND brains, especially ADHD and autistic adults, tend to move quickly in connection. When something genuinely interests them, and a new person is one of the most interesting things there is, the engagement is full. The texts come frequently. The plans get made fast. The emotional investment arrives before the relationship has a track record to support it. This isn't manufactured. It's how genuine neurodivergent interest actually works. But to someone who calibrates connection differently, it can read as overwhelming before they have the context to understand where it's coming from. Another pattern that shows up is the oversharing early problem. ND adults often lack the intuitive social filter that tells most people exactly how much personal information is appropriate at each stage of a relationship. The third date conversation that reveals childhood trauma, the difficult diagnosis, the full history. These arrive before the relationship has the structural foundation to hold them, not because the ND person doesn't care about appropriateness, but because the calibration tool for how much is too much right now doesn't work the same way. And the third pattern is the rejection sensitivity layer. For ND adults, especially those with RSD, early dating is an extremely high-stakes emotional environment. A slow text response reads as disinterest. A canceled plan reads as rejection. A neutral comment lands as criticism. This isn't irrational. It's a nervous system that processes social threat signals at higher sensitivity than the situation usually warrants. And it can produce behavior in early dating that is driven by anxiety rather than genuine interest, which creates a self-reinforcing cycle. Understanding these patterns in yourself before they play out in a new relationship is more useful than any disclosure script. So let's talk about the disclosure question. There's no universal right time to disclose an ND diagnosis to a romantic partner, but there are some useful principles. 1, disclose when the relationship has enough context to hold it. Early disclosure, date 1 or 2, tends to put more weight on the information than the relationship can support. The person doesn't have enough of you yet to contextualize the diagnosis as one part of a whole person. Late disclosure, months in, after the relationship has developed expectations, can feel like a hidden thing that should have been shared earlier. A reasonable middle ground is when you have enough shared experience that the disclosure can land as information about someone they already know, rather than a warning label on someone they're still assessing. Another principle is disclose the impact, not just the label. I have ADHD by itself tells the other person very little. What tells them something useful is what it actually means in practice for this relationship. Like, I lose track of time sometimes, and I want you to know that it's not me being dismissive. It's something I'm actively working with. Or, I process conflict slowly, and I sometimes need to step away before I can respond well. Or, I can be very intense when I'm interested in something, including people. I want you to know that's genuine, not a performance. The impact disclosure is more useful than the diagnostic label. What you actually need from a partner. This question is more important than the disclosure question, and most indie adults have never answered it clearly. Not what the movies told you you need, not what your last relationship required, what your specific brain actually needs in a sustained partnership. Patience with nonlinear communication, low drama conflict resolution, the ability to handle intensity without reading it as instability, space to decompress without it being taken personally. Getting clear on this list, honestly, specifically, is the single most useful thing you can do for your romantic life, because you can't find a good match for needs you haven't named. Listen, you're not too much for the right person. You're exactly enough. The work is figuring out what right actually means for your specific brain and your specific needs, not the relationship that looks the most normal from the outside, but the one where you actually don't have to perform being someone else. Your next one step, write down 3 things your brain actually needs in a relationship. Not what you think it should need, what you actually need to function well and feel safe. That list is the real starting point. Monday, we're getting into rejection-sensitive dysphoria, the indie experience that doesn't get talked about enough, and that affects almost everything. See you then. If this helped even a little, you can follow the show, so these conversations are here when you need them. And as always, thank you to Cloud Microphones for supporting these conversations. This has been Wisdom from the Porch. I'm GP. You're always welcome on the porch.